Good morning everyone, I am Jalil Alimpang Mangurubong and today we will discuss the Module 16, the revised Bloom's Taxonomy of Educational Objectives. At this module, we will discuss the original Bloom taxonomy that has 6 levels of Bloom taxonomy and the revised taxonomy, that 2 dimensions of the revised taxonomy and practical guide to the revised taxonomy, and apps and revised taxonomy, which is synapse and strengthener. Benjamin Samuel Bloom was an American educational psychologist who has made contribution to the classification of educational objectives and to the theory of mastery of learning. He particularly noted of the leading educational psychologists to develop the comprehensive system of describing and assessing educational outcomes in mid-1950s. He has influenced the practices and philosophies of educators around the world from the latter part of 20th century. He was the Associate Director of the Board for examining the University of Chicago. They needed a way of classifying questions shared by faculty member to the form of test bank. For 6 years, from 1949 to 1956, he led to the group of experts to come up with a framework to classify objectives. In 1956, a handbook called Taxonomy of Educational Objectives, the Classification of Educational Goals, Handbook 1, A Cognitive Domain, was published. Initially, the purpose of this handbook was to provide a framework for classifying test questions used by faculty members. However, over time, it proved to be extremely relevant and useful in the field of education. The handbook, commonly known as the Bloom Taxonomy, has been widely used in various educational activities such as curriculum planning, designing, learning activities, and assessment. It provides classification system for educational objectives in the cognitive domain, which focuses on intellectual skills and knowledge acquisition. In 1964, Bloom and his colleagues published a second handbook called Handbook to the Affective Domain, which introduced a taxonomy for the affective domain. The affective domain deals with the attitudes, values, and emotional aspect of learning. Later on, other experts also published taxonomies for psychomotor domain in 1966, 1970, and 1972. The psychomotor domain involves physical skills and coordinations. So, in overall, the taxonomy of educational objectives had a significant impact on the educational by proving a comprehensive framework for categorizing educational goals and objectives across different domains of learning. So let's proceed to the original Bloom's taxonomy. Specifically focused on the cognitive domain, consists of 6 levels with their respective subcategories. So let's proceed to the number 1. The number 1 is knowledge. So in this level involves acquiring factual information and understanding the specific of a particular subject area. It includes subcategories such as number 1.1, knowledge of specific. This subcategory refers to the understanding and terminology and specific fact and related to a subject. So the number 1.2 is knowledge of ways and means of dealing with specific. So this category involves understanding the convention, trends, sequence, and classification categories, criteria, and methodology associated with subject. So the number 1.3 is knowledge of universal and abstractions in the field. So this subcategory focuses on the understanding and principles, generalization, theories, and structures that apply to a subject. So let's proceed to the second. The number 2 is comprehension. So in this level involves interpreting and grasping the meaning of information. It includes subcategories such as 2.1 translation. This subcategory involves understanding and interpreting information in one form and expressing it another form. The number 2.2 is interpretation. So this subcategory focuses on understanding and explaining the meaning of information. So number 2.3 is extrapolation. So this subcategory involves extending and applying information in new situation or context. So let's proceed to the third level, which is application. So and this level involves using acquired knowledge and skills to solve problems or apply them in a practical situation. So that's number 3. So in number 4, which is the fourth levels, this level involves breaking down information into a constituent parts and examining the relationships and organizational principles. It includes subcategories such as 4.1 is element. This subcategory involves identifying and understanding the individual components or elements of a concept or system. So that's a subcategory 1. The subcategory 2 is relationship. This subcategory focuses on the understanding the connections and interaction between the different elements. The subcategory 3 is organizational principles. This subcategory involves understanding the underlying principles and struggles that govern the organization of information. So that's the level number 4. So let's proceed to the synthesis, which is the level 5. So this level involves combining different elements or ideas or create something new. So it includes a productions of unique communication. So in this subcategory involves creating originals and unique forms of communication such as speech, essays, or artwork. The number 2 is productions of plan and proposed to set operation. So this subcategory involves developing a plan or a strategy for solving a problem or achieving a goals. So let's proceed to the number 3 subcategory. Derivations of set of abstract relation. This category focuses on identifying and creating abstract relationship between different concepts or ideas. So that's the level number 5. So let's proceed to the level 6, which is evaluation. This level involves making judgment and assessment based on the internal or external evidence. It includes subcategories such as in terms of internal evidence. So this subcategory involves information based on internal consistency, logic, and coherence. So let's proceed to 6.2 subcategory. In terms of external evidence. So this subcategory focuses in evaluating information based on the criteria such as relevance, relativity, and validity. Overall, the Bloom taxonomy provides a hierarchical framework for categorizing the different levels of cognitive skills, starting from the basic knowledge acquisition to higher order thinking skills such as synthesis and evaluation. And now let's proceed to revised taxonomy. So the revised taxonomy is developed by Lauren Anderson and Steve Cratwell. Builds upon the original Bloom taxonomy by making several significant changes. So here are the salient differences between the old and revised taxonomy. So in number 1, labels such as verb. In the old taxonomy, the label of categories of thinking were presented as nouns. However, in the revised taxonomy, they are presented as verbs. So this change was made to emphasize the thinking as an active process. For example, instead of using evaluation as a noun, the revised taxonomy used evaluate as a verb. So the number 2 is overlapping categories. The revised taxonomy allows for more flexibility by allowing the categories to overlap. While the taxonomy still follows the hierarchical order of increasing complexity, there can be instances where the action words in over lower may appear more complex than action words in a higher level. For example, an action words like explain and the understands level may seem more complex than show and the apply level. However, when considering the entire taxonomy from the remember to the create level, the hierarchical order is maintained. So that's number 2. So let's proceed to number 3. Change from knowledge to remember. The knowledge levels in the old taxonomy was changed to remember in the revised taxonomy. This change was made because knowledge does not represent a cognitive or thinking level. Instead, remember was chosen as more appropriate term for the first thinking level, which involves recalling and retrieving knowledge. That's number 3. So the number 4 is change from comprehension to understands. The comprehension levels in the old taxonomy was changed to understands in the revised taxonomy. This change reflects the language commonly used by teachers when referring to their work, as they are more likely to use word understands rather than comprehension. That's number 4. So let's proceed to number 5. Change from synthesis to create. The synthesis levels in the old taxonomy was changed to create in the revised taxonomy. So this change reflects the recognition that creativity and the ability to generate new ideas and products should be placed at the highest levels of cognitive complexity. So the number 6 is 2 dimensions. The revised taxonomy introduced 2 dimensions within the cognitive domain. So the cognitive dimensions and knowledge dimension. The cognitive dimension represents the level of thinking, while the cognitive dimensions is based on the subcategories of knowledge from the old taxonomy. So that's the end of my report. The continuations of this module will be reported by my partner, Ohara Mandar. Thank you for watching.